Okay, so we put together some thought, Stephen and I, and we had help from our biostatistician to look at some of the US data. So here's what we thought. Okay, so we thought that we can start by saying that we are really not picking all the individuals that should be picked up by screening. And in fact, we can do some background showing that almost 1/3 of patients with lung cancer in the US would have been eligible for screening, but they didn't do it. So we can start from saying the criteria are not really helping. And then we thought of three different areas as a solution. One would be to make new risk prediction tools to better identify the population of risk, and possibly including variables that are already available to the primary care physicians, so that it will be easier for them to refer the patient. Another option is to try to modify the smoking criteria, and this way, indirectly, we would include other risk factors. We kind of did that by modifying the risk criteria on the National Health Survey in the US, just to see whether the idea was good or not. And basically, I'm not going to show you the data, but for example, if we go with the less restrictive smoking criteria, indirectly, we pick up a lot of occupational exposure. So that could be one way to go. So we can propose that as a possibility. We put together some of the concept of the limitation of the existing models. Some of the variables are prone to recall bias. We're asking people to tell us what they do. It's kind of very imprecise from an epidemiological point of view. We have models that are built mostly on wide populations, so they may not be good for other areas of the world. And we realized that we should talk about how many predictors are really out of the models. And some of them are secondhand smoke, radon, occupational exposure, air pollution, a lot of things that we don't consider. We had some thoughts about starting from occupation as one of the risk factors that should be included. And Stephen had some thoughts, because that's kind of a risk that people may consider as a proactive way to take care of your health and make actions. And then he found out that China's screening guidelines, in fact, include occupation, so there is already something there. And therefore, we could learn from what the others do. We came up with some action items. So we should develop a consensus around some of the important risk factors. We need to talk about females never smokers in Asia, people exposed to indoor pollution, still occupational exposure that are not very safe and controlled, and other items for discussions. And I think that's where we came up for. And of course, yes, we need a lot of input. Yes.
One thing you might consider as you're doing this, you're talking about expanding, but you also might consider refining. So what I mean by that is that there's been a lot of discussion about the inadequacy of the 50-year start date for women, potentially, and for African Americans. And there might be other groups that need to start earlier, people with family history, that type of thing. And if you guys can look at that, that would be a big help, because that could be near-term stuff.
Yeah, looking in other data sets, you're saying existing there. Yeah.
Thank you. Good luck.
Yes.
I think Alexander Potter rightly pointed out that the use of pack years is a complexity that may not be necessary. And simplifying that would go a long way in expanding access, such as just using the number of years exposed rather than pack years. Something else to consider.
Thank you. That's a good point.
Let's expand this a little bit open. The reason for restricting screening in the first place was the probability it would do more harm than good. Now that we know that screening does not cause harm, why are we excluding non-smokers, 18,000 of whom die in the United States each year? So I would think that this committee should spend a substantial amount of time thinking about expanding this to everyone over a certain age.
Yeah, the question for this position paper is to address the methodology for thinking about things rather than settling on some sort of list of risk factors that, should be included universally. I mean, we've learned just over the last couple of days, there's tremendous variability in the risk factors that are included in studies and current programs and national screening guidelines and the like. And that's appropriate because the risk factors really do differ in different parts of the world. And even the core ones, so to speak, age, gender, and smoking, have different levels, magnitudes of risk associated in different parts of the world. So I don't think that, a collective effort would be able to get very specific on risk factors. And then the question is, well, if not getting specific, our general methodologic considerations, is that actually a useful effort in moving things forward for a paper like this to discuss that? And that's a question for you all.
I totally agree with you that it's maybe too early just to come with screening for everybody in a certain age, because I think we should acknowledge the heterogeneity, as you said, in the world, in the countries, and empower. I think that was the key word, right? From the agile vision, right? We voted on empower the countries to select from the variables we could push forward or put forward in the paper, like COPD and history of cancer, or a family history of lung cancer, and just put them out, say there are models out there, and maybe give them at hand how they could provide and model their own model, right? Which is country specific, because there's maybe healthcare data, variable healthcare data available, and they see, the variables we put forward, and then they pick and choose and say, okay, we have that, we get that for free. Let's try to model something out of there and make something we can cope with and set the threshold according to what we can afford.
So I have another question for the group while we have a moment, which is, it's one thing to select out the variables, which ones to use, but ultimately you also have to choose some risk threshold, some percentage, 1.5 over 5 years, whatever. 4 in the long run, I think uses 2 or 3% over 6 years for study purposes. And so, yeah, you can agree on an approach to the variables, to the risk factors, but then you're still left with this issue of what level of risk are you going to screen at? And I don't know how we approach that. So we invite your thoughts and participation.
So you say, okay, this worked in that country, this worked in that country. We set the level of risk. I think it's a very important point, setting a level of risk, but maybe increasing the level of risk if there's less money, healthcare money for that.
So that's why you're
in that
talking about
country to
the
be,
economic.
just empower them to do something. Not that they read, oh, we need to do this and this. This is far too much. We can't start it, right?
So it's more like an interface with the economic availability. That's what you're saying. Resources.
It's not only economic capability, it's also about the other health issues which are there. So it has to be calibrated. And therefore, a clear level where you make your cutoff can't be given for the world.
That's okay. I'm just thinking generally about these papers, and maybe a cost benefit structure should be something we routinely integrate into the discussions of each of these presentations.
Yeah, I think we need help because we don't, that's something we don't know.
I think that's beyond the scope of our assignment. Thank you.
Because I do think that, in our own work, right, in the emphysema paper, we're going to have to evaluate solutions with different cost benefit trade-offs, right? Because of different lung cancer screening programs having different approaches. It's unavoidable, I think.